Welcome back. We're looking at Psalm 82, and this is short. This is, 8 verses long. This is a short psalm, but it's kind of perplexing when you first read it. And so let's take a look and see what's going on. What we have is the beginning verse and the final verse is the speaker, the person who's writing the psalm, if you like. God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. You notice gods is lowercase here, okay? So God has taken his place in the divine council. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. Look right down to the end. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. And so that's the kind of wrapping around the psalm. God has taken his place. He's going to judge. He's going to hold judgment, and we want him to arise and to exact judgment, to put justice in place. Now, in between, there's this indictment coming through. It's like a divine oracle. It seems like these are the words of God himself. So you've got this divine council, and God is in the midst of it. Now, who are these other gods? That's where it gets confusing for us, because it feels like the wrong language to use of humans. And yet this is describing unjust human rulers. Now, there's some debate about whether this is unjust human rulers in Israel, like the evil shepherds of Israel, Ezekiel 34, or whether this is the rulers of other nations. I'm probably more inclined to take it as the rulers of Israel, exalting themselves in a position of power so that the language of gods, in quotes, is kind of appropriate. There may even be a hint here that there's sort of the supernatural forces at work with them, that what they're doing is not just exerting their own power, but there are supernatural forces of evil at work through them. And sometimes we see that, don't we? It seems like some people have an influence for evil in the world that just goes beyond what would make sense for just an elevated human getting kind of boosted to a position of their own extreme incompetence or sinister intent. It's almost like there's a spiritual force at work sometimes in human rulership in this world. Well, here's God in the midst of that. God bringing his indictment and his judgment upon it. How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? Give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. This is God's view of the unjust human rulers, even those empowered by evil to do evil. He's saying, no, bring justice. Do the right thing, rescue, deliver. All of these terms here, maintain the right, rescue, deliver. This is what God wants from human rulers. We could look at this and apply it to political leaders, couldn't we? Powerful people in society. This is God's evaluation. Verse 5 is kind of the center of this psalm. They have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. You only need to scratch the surface of what's happening in our world today to realize that Psalm 82 is a perfect place to be finding our comfort in the midst of all that is happening or may be happening around us. Where's the comfort in this? The comfort is that God, capital G, is in charge. No matter how much people elevate themselves and puff out their chests and do things that are harmful to others, God is holding them to account. And so in the second half of the psalm, I've kept verse 5 there again. His view is they have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, here's his kind of judgment. You are, quote, gods, sons of the Most High, all of you. He's sort of, okay, you're in positions of power and influence. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince. My mind is taken to Isaiah 40, that these powerful princes of the nations are like grasshoppers. They're like grass that is just there one day and gone the next. There's a temporary reality to the rule of those who are doing injustice in the world. And so what is the cry of the heart of the believer? Recognizing God at work in the midst of it all, recognizing God judging and evaluating. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. Ultimately, we know who's in charge, and ultimately his in-chargeness will be seen. So when we're facing people who have elevated themselves perhaps to a supernatural level of evil, God is still God. God is still on the throne. God is still judging, and ultimately God will bring them down. Take a look at Psalm 82. Allow it to grip your heart and to give you confidence. By the way, this is the psalm that Jesus uses in John 10, verse 34, in that section. You can read through that and see how he's using the language of this psalm against not just a little bit of trickery with words. He's not doing that at all. What he's doing is he's using it against those who've elevated themselves as leaders, as rulers in the nation of Israel, but they were bad shepherds. And so he's condemning them by his use of Psalm 82. Take a look at John 10 and see that for yourself. But more importantly, when you're concerned by what you see going on around you, go back to Psalm 82 and remember who's evaluating, and remember who ultimately is in charge.